we'll just plan to kick this off. We'll see if Santoyo makes it.
Awesome. Yep, we're rolling on this end.
Okay. I just have to run the quick disclaimer. Motion University is hosting a panel with you guys who agreed to be on the panel and agreed to allow Motion University to use the panel. This is currently being hosted in the private Facebook group, but we may take excerpts or publish the whole thing to YouTube or public channels. So anything you say or do is not necessarily private to the group. And Teddy, are you still here, Teddy? Okay. Oh, I thought Teddy might leave me on that one. So.
No, I'm
here. And agree to allow us to use it. So that's the basic recap. We're at noon, so what I'll do is I'll intro it, and then I will give you guys a chance to give a quick introduction, and then we'll kick it off with questions. It's just a conversation. It's just us. It is live, but it's just kind of us fielding questions that have been submitted, trying to help people get better sound from the variety of different perspectives.
Do you want to just?
So we'll be talking.
Sorry, just jumping in real quick. I remember one thing with just the audience of who they're talking to really fast too.
Go for it.
No, I meant you could. I was just making that as a thing.
Yeah, well, it's the audience are a lot of beginner filmmakers. Some of them are usually one-man band or have not used other sound artists, I'll call them in a general sense. So we have some questions all the way from location sound, specifics on microphones. I want to run some stuff on post because I know. So in my perspective, Nathan's specialty is in post. Teddy's like mixing. I think you may have done some post, and then in Santoyo is hopping on here just quickly. I saw a note from him. He's kind of more location type stuff. So you guys can bridge any of that your expertise warrants, but that's kind of how I may pitch some of you guys don't have to answer every question either, but yeah, a lot of these guys are looking to work with sound people or maybe one-man band shows themselves. So kind of, we can talk about a breadth of what you do and then how we can apply that to the day-to-day stuff that these guys are actually doing. So.
Yeah, I have a couple of interesting asides that aren't just simply technical also that you may want to consider.
Sure.
Like newcomers sometimes don't think of, so it will help them in their career.
Yeah, and even general advice to sound people. Those guys are out there too, and we want to make sure we're educating them as well. So, alrighty, I'm going to kick this live and kick us off. Let me get over here. And hey, everybody. Welcome to another panel for the Film Career Community Facebook group. Today, we're focusing on sound, and we've got a great lineup of panelists. We'll be talking about everything from on-set recording to technical specifics to personal specifics on personality and how to be a sound person on sound on set, and then also we'll do some stuff on post-production. So we've got a list of questions and things we'll be pitching to our panelists, but without further ado, welcome to our panel. And we've Joseph Santoyo is still coming, will be joining us. We got Nathan Ashton and Teddy, and I'll be hosting. And we've also got Andrew Bartlett, who's assisting as co-host from Motion University as well. So thank you guys for being a part of the panel today. Let's give a quick round of introductions, a little bit about yourself, how long you've been in the business, what your specialties are, and we'll kind of go around from there. So let's start with Teddy. Give us a quick introduction.
Hey guys, Teddy Halloran here. I've been in the business since about 1987. I'm a musician from way back. You'll find that a lot of sound mixers are musicians in their background. It's just a natural segue. I've been doing features for quite a while. I think I have somewhat 60 plus maybe at this point. So I've been around a lot of stuff, both a lot of low independent indie films, mostly. Done some union features also, but mostly feature work. I've done post-production, which is really good because if you can understand what you can get away with, what you can't, what you should be recording, what you should not be recording, how far you can go, what you should get excited about, what you should let go, those are all very important also. So also having a good rapport with your post-production elements is very important if you have the chance and the opportunity to speak to those guys.
Good. Cool. And Nathan, give us a quick intro.
Sure. Nathan Ashton here. I kind of end of the pipe for audio. I do almost exclusively audio post-production. I know enough about what Teddy does to burn the house down. But similarly, I did get my start in music as a musician. Started recording musicians and then decided that it didn't matter. And I think that was my epiphany. I would treat each guitar player the same way. And I stopped caring about what made one guitar player different from the next one. But when I got into sound for films, fisticuffs, it's all the same techniques. Running sound effects for a car drive-by, it's all the same, but it seems to matter each time it happens. And that has got to be there. So I made the jump and abandoned doing music and left that to people who love it. I got into sound effects. I've done shorts to features to series for Spike TV, HBO, got to work with the Burns on Beyond the Mask. But last thing I'll say before I punt off, I have a standing thing. If you hire somebody like Teddy, I will give you a discount on what I do because a good location mixing team makes post-production audio go from a drudgery to just a joy. You can be creative if what you're given to begin with is good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can personally attest to each of these guys' expertise. I've hired each of them, brought them on different projects as well, from to live mixing, and they do a fantastic job and are great people to have on set as well. So, well, Santoyo, I think is still going to be joining us. We'll get him an introduction when he hops on. But let's, Andrew, let's go ahead and start with one of our questions and get the round going.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the questions that we had submitted ahead is kind of just starting off and kind of a little bit of a general flow of things. And the question was, what are some common mistakes that you see indie filmmakers making that should be avoided? So maybe not necessarily indie, is kind of more on the film side of things. That's also, I know a lot of our audience is also people kind of starting off in more of the promotional filmmaking world. So I feel like there's kind of a mix of both. But in general, maybe mistakes that you see people starting out that they're making and ways that they could avoid those.
Who are you flipping it to? Oh, me.
Yeah.
I think one thing is maybe just getting too much into the gear. I mean, sometimes a hammer is a hammer and a screwdriver is a screwdriver. You just got to make sure you've got both of them. You're not going to work on the car with just one. You have to have a lot of different tools. Now, if you're just going out doing a typical corporate thing, you're going to go out with maybe one boom mic and a couple of wires. Of course, I do mostly feature work, so we have to have a lot of different tools. That includes a complement and assortment of shotguns. We have short shotguns, medium shotguns, long shotguns. We have condensers for inside. I carry dynamic mics. If I'm recording a train, I don't want to do that with a dynamic. With a condenser. I have Sennheiser 421s for doing very loud stuff, or gunfire, things like that, where you're going to blow up your condenser. So you want a good, solid dynamic. I also have different mics, like my Bartlett mics. They're designed for stage work. You can use those for plants or different things. And then have a complement, an assortment of mics if you can. Like I have 3 barrels and a lot of different capsules for my short condensers. Things can go wrong. I use the Octava MC12s, which is a Russian version of like a Sheps. But like the Sheps, they're both prone to moisture in the microphones. You can hear it. It starts like rumbling, like when you're hearing moisture in the system. We actually carry hair dryers with us. to do that. Now the Sennheisers, they're bulletproof. They can go through anything. They're like military specs. I love my Sennheisers. I have a 416. I have and a 415 from a long one. 415's magic. I mean, sometimes you're 10 feet away, sounds like you're on a wire. It's an amazing microphone. But sometimes just being about the gear and not the technique. I mean, if you don't understand gain structure, you can have the best equipment in the world and you're still going to get bad sound. You don't understand how to interface, with the cameras. You don't understand all the small parts that go into it. You don't know how to act properly on a set, or know when to talk to a director and not to, how to bring it to different people. You don't know how to act properly wiring up talent. I mean, that you get kicked off of a set. I mean, you pay attention to things other than just your equipment. There's a lot of components that go into this.
Yep. Good. Cool. Thank you. Anybody else? This is just kind of some general common mistakes you guys want to speak to off the bat.
I would say disorganization. I know when you're running a small team, it's lean and mean and you want to get it done. If you can't find something later, you might as well never have recorded it to begin with. So to keep notes on what is happening and where the files are going is huge. And then on my end, to have a unified rhyme and reason for how it was done. I love it when Boom is always on channel 1 and Labs are on 2, 3, 4, 5, or the other way around. But if I have to hunt and peck and guess because I didn't get notes and it was whatever was convenient for the person recording, and it costs me a lot of time. And if you're doing it yourself, then don't underestimate what you're going to forget between when you shot the thing and when you finally get to audio post. So keep detailed notes.
Am I back on? Yeah, agreed there, Nathan. Organization, read your script, know what's coming. I mean, you have to know what the scenes are going to be about. If you need special equipment, know how many characters, know how many mics you're going to need. I mean, that's some simple stuff. Organizations, use your metadata, name your characters for post. That'll come through. So if you have your characters, a lot of the machines we use, you can actually name your channels. We'll name them for the character that's on screen. That'll help you guys later. I know a lot of people like Boom on channel 1. I've always put my booms at the end of the chain because just ergonomically, I like to mix with my right hand, and I'm very boom centric. So I keep everything boom right, but I always let posts know that the last thing they see in the chain is going to be the boom. I actually have 2 boom channels because sometimes we have to double boom or have a plant. So the last 1 or 2 mics in the chain will be boom. But yeah, organization. Talk to everybody you need to talk to in the chain. Editors, they want to know what's going on. Especially, I mean, things as simple as frame rate and time codes and all that. Make sure you get that right. Always don't assume anything. Especially on a corporate shoot, they may be shooting for foreign or something. They may be shooting 24 frames, true 24. Or they may be shooting 29.97 for some reason, or so it's not always going to be 23.98. So make sure you talk to your camera department about interfacing, getting those things right from the start. You can fix a lot of that later, but don't fix what you don't have to.
If you don't have to fix it in post, why? And Santoyo, Joseph Santoyo has joined us. I'll give him a chance for a quick introduction and tell us a little bit about yourself, Joseph. What your kind of main expertise is in the industry and projects you've worked on. And the current question is any common mistakes that you see indie filmmakers making that they could be avoiding. So give us an introduction and say howdy.
Cool. Well, hey, thank you. I apologize so much for being late. My name is Joseph Santoyo, and I am a production sound mixer and boom op. Sorry, what was the other stuff I was supposed to introduce?
Just about yourself, history in the industry, what projects you've been a part of, what's your specialty?
Yeah. History in the industry. I started out in post-production, and that was kind of, I would like late 2009, early 2010, sometime around there is when I was my very first kind of foray into sound design. And got connected with Nathan actually fairly early on. And yeah, and then the first feature set that I ever worked on was Beyond the Mask with Teddy, and I was his sound PA for that. And then, I don't know, over the last year and a half, I've maybe 2 years or so, anyway, have started working with Teddy a lot more, which has been a blast. I boom out for him. And yeah, I don't know.
You used to do some more post stuff, but you started focusing more in on the location sound. Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
Cool. Good. Thanks for joining. Andrew, what else? Or I don't know, Joe, did you have something you wanted to say about common mistakes?
Yeah. I don't necessarily know that I just know this is a mistake that I've made in the past. I feel like a lot of indie filmmakers are working with rental gear, and a mistake that I have made even somewhat recently, where you're getting rental gear for something, and even though you've worked with it before in the past, you know how to operate it, you're very familiar with it, making the mistake of waiting to get on set before you pull it out and plug it in and try to incorporate that into your system, because sometimes it just doesn't work the way that it always has in the past, and you have no idea why. And that leads to this mad scramble to try to figure out what's wrong. And it's just, you don't want to be doing that on the day when everyone's standing there watching you, waiting. So yeah, I would definitely encourage anyone who is using rental gear, even if you've used it a lot in the past, that's something you definitely want to take out, build whatever you need to do the night before, and get it incorporated into your existing workflow and make sure that everything's working the way it should.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Good tip. Know your gear and be prepared. Yeah. Teddy had another thought there.
Yeah, tying on to what Joe's saying, sometimes even your own gear, you don't know. You pay attention to your own gear and learn what the little switches do. That will help you down the line. Now, here's something in lavalier world, and it kind of ties in what Joe's saying. And it's sometimes you think it's the equipment, and it's not, especially wireless. Just the other day, I was in a corporate environment where we were getting what I call walking on the RF. You're in a room and you're seeing audio frequency levels on your transmitter, but you're not talking into it. A lot of times there's things in a corporate room that will transmit and create RF noise. Sometimes it's not enough to totally block the signal, but you can hear it kind of cooking in the background. We had a situation on Overcomer where we had, I think we had like 6 or 7 lavs out in a big coach scene where they're all talking, and then we had some other table mics out also. But I had my receivers were over with me in a mixing room outside, and we couldn't get anything through the room. It was just blocked. So sometimes a physical room has RF barriers. So we ended up putting the receivers inside the room on a stake, and that solved our problem. But if you're you can just fry your mind thinking this should be working and it isn't. So what do you do when it should be and it's not working? Well, know your own gear well enough to know what to do to punt. And sometimes you have to get outside that box and do things with the equipment, but definitely understand what all the buttons do. That's important.
Yeah.
Excellent. So the next question that we had, and this one was submitted on Instagram. So this question was kind of generally speaking, what would you guys recommend for a starter kit for someone looking at getting into sound? So, and I'm assuming in this case that it's kind of like for those of us who maybe don't have a dedicated sound person, but you're kind of a director / shooter and you want to be able to have better sound, or maybe there's kind of that, but then also where it's like they maybe have one person who can do sound. So but it's not like they're not necessarily going into sound as a career at this point, would be my guess. I'm kind of reading into the question a little bit. So what would you say are recommending for a beginner sound kit without getting too technical and in the weeds, like maybe some general guidelines? Like I know we could get super specific on different things, and part of that depends on their budget and all that kind of thing. Budget wasn't specified on this. But yeah, without going super, super technical, what would you guys recommend for a beginning sound kit? And I don't know who wants to start on that question. But yeah, and whoever wants to, go ahead and jump in on that. Go for it, Teddy.
Yeah, probably a basic kit, but I would go with something that is a mixer recorder now. In the old days, you could go, I mean, we started off, we actually would plug straight into a Betacam box that was umbilical. We weren't even using a mixer, but would come along, and you had the Shores, and then they were, tied to the camera. Now, I would recommend getting something where you can double system, where you are not only the mixer but the recorder, and you could get into something like a Zoom or something like pretty cheap, or a Mix Pre, or the 633 sound devices is great. Something doesn't have to be tons of channels, but something that will record and mix at the same time. Even sometimes you can fix something, like if you didn't hit the camera right, or you had an issue getting to the camera, well, at least you have it and can sync it up later. Microphones, you don't have to go Electros, amps, Zaxcom, anything. You can get a G3 or something. They work great. G3s are awesome. You can get a something like, use the mics that come with them. They actually sound nice if you're not worried about hiding them. They're a little big. Or you could get into something like an OST TLM40. It's very small, sounds great, $100 or less. On your boom, I would say something like a 416 Sennheiser. I know a lot of people use a Rode or something when they want to go down. To me, the Rodes are a little bit prone to RF noise. I've had them where you hear the tick, 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 tick. You pick up high phones and different stuff floating through the air. Sometimes they act like an antenna. I would go with a used 416 over there. You can pick them up pretty cheap all day long and have them checked out. But I would take a used 416 over a Rode or some of the other cheaper mics. I mean, they're built like tanks, and they're going to serve you well, and you can get them pretty cheap. So don't be afraid of used either, consignment stuff. You go through something like True Audio or Location Sound on the consignments. I bought tons of used gear, and it's not a bad way to go. But small mixer, there's several different brands, the Zoom, the Sound Devices, some of the others. But I would recommend getting something that records now as well as just mixes. So, Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, on a very basic level, on a very basic level, I think that if a boom, in my opinion, getting a mic that you can use on the boom, I would prioritize that over trying to go wireless if you were just going to do one or the other. I just did a conference Tuesday and yesterday in Chicago, and lots of people running around when all the sessions would let out, right in the middle of your interview and everything. We pretty much, I had a wire on everybody, but the boom sounded great. So if I was going to pick just one, if you were just going to have one microphone, I would definitely go with the boom. As far as a recorder, I know some guys, like for instance, the team I was with, they typically are just recording straight into their FS7, just plugging the boom right into it. And depending on what camera you have, that can, recording straight to camera can work, but cameras have come a long ways, but a lot of camera manufacturers don't maybe put the care into building the preamps on their cameras as well as they should, and so you'll have noise issues with it. There will be just, you know, a steady hiss in the background, things like that. So it kind of depends. Some people just ask, kind of plug it straight in the camera, and my answer to that is always, well, it depends on what camera you're shooting with. But like Teddy said, the Zoom H4n, in my opinion, I don't know that I would get the original H4n. Those preamps, I know people that have gotten excellent results with them, but I don't know how they did it. I have always found the preamps on those to be fairly noisy, but the Pro version, I don't remember how much it is. It's not very much. They updated the preamps on those and they sound great. I don't know. I don't know if I'm getting too lost in the weeds on the technical, specifics, but yeah, there's several budget shotgun microphones that have come out in the last year, 2 years that are pretty solid. Yeah, you'll also need a boom pole. It's in one of the key. The number one thing that you have to do is you have to get the microphone. I'm wondering why Teddy's smiling so much. You have to get the microphone close to the subject that's speaking. You can't just mount it on your camera. You're never going to get good sounding results that way. So you're going to need some sort of a boom pole and a shock mount to suspend the microphone on so that you can get that over your speaker and close to their mouth, or as close as you can. Yeah, obviously you'll need a cable and then a recorder, or going into camera if that ends up working out for you. And I would say that to me is a fairly, you can get some good stuff with that setup. If you needed to go even more stripped down than that, there are a couple of decent lav microphones that you can plug into a phone. And my experience with most of them have been that they don't sound very good, but there's a couple now that are out. One from a company called Deity that sound pretty good. So, I think that's like $50 or something, and plug that into your phone, and, now syncing that in post, you might have some issues with that, but that's something you would have to work through. But
I would rather have something recorded with a pretty subpar preamp or microphone than something recorded more than 6 feet away.
Nathan, do you have any other recommendations for starter kit stuff? I know you're working a lot in post, but even maybe from that side of things, what are some good starter things people can be looking at?
Well, I was actually sitting back coasting because I didn't think the question was going to come to me. To me, use what you've got at hand. I'm starting to learn the Adobe Creative Suite, including Audition. And there are some things that make me want to pull my hairs out because I'm used to a different set of software and everything's in a weird place. But an EQ is an EQ is an EQ, and some are cooler than others, but they all do the same thing. And so to get in and to figure out, this sounds boomy, well, you should cut. What do you do for a lav to get it to sound remotely real? You cut it 400, you boost it 2K, and then you crank the high end as high as it'll go before you sizzle something. Those sorts of things you just gotta get in and play with, and everything comes with a battery of stuff. Then when you hit a wall and you can't get it to do what you want it to do, then look for upgrading your stuff. Now, I personally work on Pro Tools. it's made for this. It can take anything you throw at it. I use a lot of Waves plugins because they're ubiquitous. So if I exchange with somebody else, they're going to have it. But then there are a few cool tools that I've picked up because I needed them for a project, and now I have them for your project.
Good. So kind of taking off of the idea of getting the microphone as close as possible, the sound guy's dreaded scenario of the wide shot, or as I learned from Teddy, see the world. Well, how do you best capture sound in that situation? What microphones are you using, and what are maybe some I won't say cheats, but tips that sound person could be looking for to get a microphone close? What are the options?
There's always ADR.
There's always ADR. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, Teddy.
Yeah, and don't be afraid of ADR. I had to tell a director on one show who was scared of ADR. I said, ADR is your friend. I mean, ADR has really come along, so don't be afraid of ADR. But one thing I do, and I tell directors and people when I first meet them and I'm auditioning for the show or whatever, is that I'm very boom centric. I like the sound of the boom. If I can get the boom in there, it's going to sound much better. So on a wide shot, this is the question: how do you do your wide shots? A lot of times we have two cameras. One will be shooting tight, one is wide. Hopefully they're both wide. But you're going to have lavaliers on everybody. But the problem is you don't want them to sound like a newscaster. The proximity is going to be right here on a lav. And if the shot is on an 18 millimeter lens and you're 30, 40 feet away, you don't want it to sound this way. So we always incorporate the boom into those shots also. Now, the boom is far enough away where you're not going to get phase cancellation, phase distortion. So it's a 3 to 1 ratio, or what is it? If this mic is next to that mic and they're 1 foot away, then you have to be 3 feet away in order not to get phase cancellation with your next one. Well, if the boom's across the room, well, you're certainly not going to get that. What you want is, I tell them, you want the scene to sound like the lens. So if the audience has experienced the scene from 30 feet away, you want to feel that it sounds like that. Now you're still going for intelligibility, so that's going to come from here, from your lavs. But you can take that boom and talk to Nathan and those guys and Joe, they both do post. You can put that boom in there and take maybe 15, 20% boom, and then you have 80% lav intelligibility. But you add a little bit of that boom, then you take it and you got some slap because of the distance, but you time slip it. So you take and you move that boom back a little bit, and you line it up with your lavaliers, and you can adjust that however you want it because you have them on individual channels. But that'll make it sound to your ear like a wide shot, but you have the intelligibility of the tight mics. Now the other thing you can do, and we do this a lot, is if they give you the time, take and run the scene again with just the actors and a boom mic. Bring them in and get that close proximity. We will gather the actors around and have them rerun the scene just for sound as a wild track. And a lot of times you can drop that in because if it's wide, the lips are so far away, the sync is not, I won't say terribly important, but you won't see it as much. Nathan can attest to that. So you can drop those, the sound of that boom in, and it will intercut perfectly with when you're moving your close-ups, because it's the same sound, the same mic, the same ambient environment. And if you do that last, the actors have already done the scene like maybe 10 takes, and they get locked into a performance. Their timing, they finally have the scene down. So if you do that last, just for sound, it'll drop in like ADR 90% of the time. Next. Nathan?
No, I'm right there with you. That's exactly right. And as long as it's labeled and we can find it, those things, the wild tracks work amazingly well.
Joe, any tips from you on what to do in a wide shot? Do we, what besides lavs? I mean, I guess Teddy was talking about, taking the boom out wide. Is there any chance you hide microphones on set in props or anything like that? Any thoughts on options for wide shots?
Yeah. I'm laughing at you, Teddy, because I'm about to start talking about plant mics. Um, but yeah, you can definitely hide microphones on set. I remember on Overcomer, we had this shot where two characters are kneeling in the living room praying, and they're like around this ottoman praying, and it was the camera kind of like pulls back as they're praying, and it's you're seeing like 5 feet over their head, so can't get the boom in there. So we did use plant mics and just kind of had them on the floor, hidden behind the ottoman, pointing at the people that are talking, and it sounds like you got a boom in there. So you can definitely do the plant mics option. Another option, if it's a locked off shot, a lot of people start to editors and whatnot, I feel like, start to get nervous, but it's my understanding, and when I've seen it done, it's not that hard, but if it's a locked off shot, you can just shoot a clean plate all you need is a clean plate of the area over the person's head, and then you can get in there with the boom, and it can be in the shot, but it's just a easy little shoot, I can't think of what the term is now, but anyway, you can just kind of paint that out in post. Yeah, mask, thank you. So that can also be another option when you have a really
I even
shot.
seen you lay on the ground behind tables and things, in wide shots to get a microphone in close enough.
If I recall correctly, it was a casket, but
Better to lay behind the casket than in it.
yes, that's fair. Although our department guys gave me a hard time about that, and they wanted me in the casket, so they had all these plans to like cut holes in the side and everything so I could stick the mic out and everything. But yeah, anyway.
Awesome. All right. So kind of along the lines of, we're talking a little bit about logs there for a minute, but one question too was, you talked about hiding them and stuff like that. I think for a lot of us just starting out, there's you clip them on the outside and that's that. But especially when you're dealing with wind, or you don't want to have that look of it just, very obvious in the frame. What are ways to hide lav mics, and especially to avoid, the clothes noise and like all that kind of thing, especially if you have someone who's a very hands-on speaker or whatever, oftentimes they're bumping it and that kind of thing. So any tips on hiding them and avoiding, noise issues with that?
I'll just jump in with a very cynical, smart aleck response to that. Hundreds of dollars and years later, just when you think you have all of the tools you could possibly need to get a clean wire, just you watch. I promise your next gig, nothing is going to work. And you're just going to be tearing your hair out all day long. So that question is not, I don't feel like it's a simple, X, Y, or Z answer.
Is that a polyester factory?
Yeah, exactly.
Cotton clothing. I think the only thing I have to contribute to this is please wear soft clothing.
Yes,
please. Something I encounter a lot in the corporate world is our very starched dress shirts, which are very loud. And a lot of times I find myself in situations where the noise I'm getting in the microphone is not, and they sound very similar sometimes, but it's not the cloth actually rubbing on the mic. It's not that hard to solve that problem. It's the sound of the cloth rubbing on itself, whether it's their shirt rubbing together or rubbing on their undershirt, or whatever it is, as they're moving their shoulders around, their clothes are rubbing on each other, and the mic hears whatever it's closest to better, and so the mic is like millimeters away from this starchy shirt rubbing around. things like chest hair, that can be a huge, a huge issue, just scratching on the shirt. Again, not even necessarily the mic, but the key in all of that is to essentially, you're trying to create a little bubble of air, if you will, around the mic where nothing's touching it. Yeah.
Not be seen, to create like a bump inside the shirt, or wherever you may have it. So Teddy's got a few thoughts for us.
Yeah, like there's going to be a lot of different things you can do, and you need to start building up your kit. So here's, just I have a whole kit. This is just a bag full of tricks I bring, when I'm miking up actors. Here's another thing. These are, one set of connectors. So I've got vampire clips. I've got non-vampire clips. I love these. These are made by PSC. This is called a guard. I don't know if you can see that. I take a little bit of Joe's snot, put it in there. It's really Joe's sticky stuff. So when you put it
it's a double-sided tape. It's a double-sided tape.
Thank you, Joe.
Clear that up now. Yeah.
We call it snot in the business. But so this is a microphone made up with this rig on it. I've got a little piece of foam and then some kinesio tape on there. This stuff's wonderful. You attach it with top stick, which is pay tape. So you just take this, put it on there, and then it's wonderful. You can't believe how many problems it solves. So here's the mic head that is in. This is a TLM1 or TLM40 OST, very small microphone head, and that's it attached to. I leave a lot of these rigged up because I use them so much. I use kinesio tape. Kinesio tape, that's the stuff you see the volleyball players, they have on. It's sonically transparent. You can cut a piece and put it over the entire mic. So you can put it on the skin. It's not going to have the latex issues with it. So you cut a 1-inch square just right over the mic. Now you may want to add a piece of hush lob. This is a little piece of foam. It's got a hole in it. So you just put this over your mics. I cut them in half. These are made for like the COS 11s. But you put a piece of that and a piece of this kinesio, put it on the skin, or you put it on the clothing. A lot of times that'll just wonderful because you can cover up the whole mic. Also, I have a lot of. You're going to want a bunch of wind gags. These are all little wind covers for your lavaliers. They're wonderful. It's like a King Kong movie. It's showing bigger than it should be, so they're actually pretty small when they're on the person. Hey, here's another thing. When you're dealing with talent, just because you're the sound professional, you don't need to be getting up in their space. Everybody's individual, and they're not going to many times appreciate you getting up, especially non-professionals, but even actors. You're going to want to get one of these. This is a lav bullet. So you attach your microphone to this, drops right down their shirt. It's very heavy, or down a pants. But I was working recently with an actor. He was in the Cowboys with John Wayne. So he goes back, but he didn't want me dropping this down his pants. He wanted to do it himself. Give him that space. Just because you're the pro doesn't mean you can take advantage of your, of your position. Also, get some breath spray. You're right in these people's face. Some Altoids, some nice hand lotion. You're like up in their stuff. I mean, be very aware of the talent. You want to, be a nice guy. A lot of times if you're miking up people, make sure there's other folks in the room. That's just common sense, especially minors. You should have the parents in there with you if you're miking up a minor. There's also, Joe, you can attest to this because you actually turned me on to these, the Ursa straps. You're going to want, this is for a thigh mount. These are wonderful. Tom Clay, turn me off if I get long-winded here. This is a Ursa strap. You put the microphone in this little pocket. I'm going to go slow so you can see. It's got a silicone strap on here so it doesn't droop down your leg later on. They also make some great little gadgets here. Joe was talking about chest hair. These are great for chest hair. It's a these are Ursa chest straps. So you got this strap, and the microphone goes in a little pocket right here. And then it threads through here. It's got the silicone on it again, as you can see. But that straps to their chest right here. And they're wonderful. So chest hair and all of that. Real good stuff, Ursa strap. Now, poor man stuff. Not all of y'all have the $30,000 to buy one of those. So actually, they're like 36 bucks. This is an Ace bandage. It's the self. It doesn't have the little clips. It's self-adhesing Ace bandage. You can take and put your mics, take a microphone, put an Ace bandage. Always put the comfortable side to the skin, but you just clip it to the Ace bandage, and then you can wrap that around an ankle, a thigh, a waist. So Ace bandages are great, the cheap stuff. Get creative. This is a Craftsman telephone clip. I had to drill out the little metal clip on the back, but it's got a belt clip. Joe and I use these on Washington's Armor, where we had horse work. You don't want to be clipping a little mic with a little rinky-dink clip on the back of a guy getting off and on a horse. It's going to fall off eventually. So this has Velcro and very robust. It's not coming off. So you don't always have to go down to the audio store to find everything you want. Joe uses some nice straps he gets from Lowe's that can be used with those. So there's other toys you can get, but go on some of the sites, experiment. There's Joe, what's that? Mike Love, Hiding Techniques. There's a thread on Facebook. There's actually a whole group that's just about That's I'd highly recommend getting on that.
Oh man, I think it's
like,
I don't know.
Hiding Techniques or something. I forget.
Yeah, I'll have to find that and send that over to JC. And as far as wind noise, a lot of, if you're clipping on the outside of someone's shirt, so at the conference the last 2 days, almost everything we did was just, on the suit jacket, on the collar of their dress. And we just didn't have time. It was literally, you have 5 seconds to get a mic on them, and then we have to roll. And so in those situations, most microphones, you can just buy little windscreens and things for them that you just pop on there. Now, a lot of times those windscreens will add a lot of bulk to the mic, depending on the mic and the windscreen. So when you're trying to hide it, sometimes those windscreens are prohibitive to try to use. Yeah, there you go. There's one. But the beauty of hiding a mic is usually when it's buried under a layer or two of clothes, that offers a lot of wind protection. So typically you don't need as much additional wind protection for the mic when it's hidden.
Yeah, so a lot of these, some of the differences between, I would say, shooting narrative type stuff versus interviews. So when you're doing narrative, in my mind, there's lots of options to hide. When you're doing interviews, it's a little, maybe less so. And do you ever hide them up under the collars, or people don't wear as many ties nowadays? I don't know. What do you do for interview type situations? How do you hide them? Because you're not going to be elaborate with all the wraps and the, those kind of things.
Yeah. Honestly, in a lot of corporate content, at least the stuff that I have experience with, a lot of people are wearing ties because it's like, oh, this is usually it's people that are higher up in the company that are being interviewed. And even if not, they're trying to look nice because their boss said they had to wear a tie to work if they were going to be interviewed, whatever. So you will have a lot of ties. Sometimes ties can be really, really noisy. It's just the material that they're made out of. And it depends on how the person tied the knot and how tight or loose the knot is. How some people, when they talk with their hands, it like moves their neck collar area so much. And then some people, they're like waving their arms around and you don't get any movement. I'm not sure if that's the way the clothing is cut or just physiologically. I don't know how that all works, but Wow. What was your question, JC? I distracted
Yeah,
myself.
it was just where to hide microphones on interviews versus
Yeah.
negative.
Typically, the higher up you go, in my opinion, the worse it starts to sound. I don't like doing things around people's collars. Ties can, doing it in a tie, usually if they're wearing a tie, a lot of times I will go there just because ties kind of flop around. And if you try to go lower, you can have a lot of interference with the tie rubbing on the mic and rubbing on the shirt and everything. But typically you want it to be somewhere in the chest area. So that can, I don't know, if they're wearing dress shirts, even the starchy ones, typically, I think it's called a placket, that kind of double layer of cloth where the buttons are. So typically I'm going down, I don't know, it's like 1, 2, 3, between the third and fourth button, I guess, from the top, and just kind of going between the placket, tucking in there. I always try to go right up against the top or the bottom button because the material where it's buttoned is being held together tighter and it doesn't move around and rustle as much. And I always like to do double-sided tape on both sides. So I'm taping it down to the bottom layer of cloth, and then I'm taping the top layer to it as well, to just, again, trying to immobilize the cloth from moving around. A lot of like women's tops and dresses and sweaters and things, like in the neckline is typically where I'll go, just right there in the center. And all you're doing is you just have a little bit of, tape, and you just like right behind the seam, or not the seam. I'm trying to think of what that, I guess collar. There's usually a kind of a double layer of material right there along the neckline. And so just kind of going right there. I don't know, Teddy, do you have any thoughts on hiding?
Yeah, Joe. It depends on if you're doing corporate or narrative work. On corporate, you don't have the time, and they don't want you all up in their space. Corporate, I'll typically go like lower on a tie, but you come up under the center of the tie, and typically, tape it to where it's just the head is just sneaking out the edge of the tie, and you'll get rid of a lot of noise that way. And you typically don't have all the toys you do. But corporate, that works because usually they're just sitting there staring at the microphone or teleprompter anyway. You're not dancing and moving around and shooting people like in movies. So in a movie on the tie, you actually want to come down into the knot. So you want to thread it down through the knot, and then just don't even peek it out, but just the edge. And again, you use your Joe Sticky stuff, which is you get we call it, again, it's snot. You peel off a little teeny piece of this stuff. I don't know if y'all can see that okay. And you just dab a little bit on your microphone, and that'll keep it from sneaking out of the knot. But on most tie knots, it's pretty easy to thread down through there, and then then hide the rest of it down the shirt really well. Make sure. Usually there's a couple of pieces of snot involved in that situation because you got to back it into the tie. That's only if you're doing film or narrative or actors, people, but corporate, you can just sneak the head off the side. If you bury it under the tie, you can end up with all kind of noise and flapping around and a mess like that. So I try and keep it in the air at that point.
That's good. Yeah. I want to try to hit one more question before we do our final rounds. So Andrew, I think you had a last one there picked out.
Yeah. And so I think this one I'm going to point to Nathan first, and others can jump in as there's time as well. But this is another one live. Courtney was asking, I've been told to only use one mic or the other in post, and that the second mic is just for safety. So when is it appropriate to mix both boom and lav, and when is it good to only use one?
Well, you gotta trust your ears. When you talk to your location person, they can usually tell you what the hero mic is. So is it the boom? Teddy gives me boom that is consistent shot to shot to shot, And so I dial it up and just run the level. But then somebody doesn't have the presence or body. They feel a little bit ghostly in the sound. Well, you dial in a little bit of their lav and they gel. So a lot of times I'm using both. Now, if I'm not getting a clean, steady boom, then I'm leaning more heavily on the lav and getting them level and steady, and then dialing in a little bit of air off of the boom. The problem that happens, and the reason they're saying use one or the other, I guess there's two things. First, the more open microphones you have at a time, the more just scrummage that happens into your recording, and that's not always pleasant. But then the second is when the mics do end up close to each other. You have something down about that far. Teddy said 1 to 3. Is that right, Teddy? So if it's a foot to your lav, then the boom needs to be 3 feet away, or you have to start phase aligning them. Or you have two people talking to each other and they come in close to each other, and now I'm a foot from this one and like a foot and a half from the one on the other person, and it starts to sound thin and weird. So then you are switching from one to the other as they're talking. But finally, there's no Bible on this. So many times I will be running primarily off the opposing person's lav, because it's about the right distance away to approximate the sound of a boom. And just sounds good. But then you have to dodge when the other person makes an exclamation. You got to automate everything up and down. So you do tend to pick a hero, but I wouldn't say that only use that as a hard and fast one mic only rule.
Good. Well, I want to give some time for our kind of lightning round here. And one of our favorite questions to ask on these panels is to give each of you guys a chance to recommend some sort of resource, whether it's a book, a podcast, training, online, or conference, favorite scripture passage. It doesn't matter. Just some sort of resource, whether it's specific to sound or life or filmmaking, whatever it may be, but just some sort of resource that's been influential to you in business or personal growth. And love to pass those things along as we all grow and learn together through this industry, in a general sense at least. So you guys have anything that you want to recommend to the folks?
I'll jump. I've read a book called Quitter. I can't remember who wrote it, but when I was trying to make the leap from working for somebody else to working for myself, that book, along with Into a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day, I think, is another one that both gave me the courage and some framework to make the leap. So Quitter is one a book I would recommend.
That's just from the title alone, that sounds like a great book. Just off the top as a recommendation, you should go read the book Quitter. It's just just makes you chuckle. That's all. How about the rest of you guys? Anything come to mind for the rest of you guys that a recommendation you want to pass along? It's not mandatory.
No, I think probably the biggest
It doesn't have to be the most important thing you've ever read in your life.
I know. I'm trying to think of a good way to say it, but I think probably the biggest shortcoming, perhaps, in and I'm not really entirely sure whose fault it is, or if it's like even is someone's fault, but I feel like a big shortcoming in the freelance industries is the lack of teaching on the business aspect of essentially running a business. When you're freelancing and you're working for yourself, you're running a business. And if you're not incorporating good business practices, you're you're headed for disaster, most likely, or you're just going to have a very, very hard go of it. I don't know. It took me a little while to kind of shift my mindset to realize that I needed to be consuming business content and not just film sound content. But I would heartily recommend. Yeah. There's a great book called Worth Every Penny by Sarah Petty, and I'm trying to remember, it's Aaron someone. That's probably been mentioned here, but that's a great book. There is kind of an online community both on Facebook, and they have a YouTube channel called The Future. And I'm trying to remember, again, I feel like this is probably, you guys have talked about this in the past. I'd be shocked if you had. I'm trying to remember, I think The Future just split off into two. JC, do you remember what the split was? One was just about freelance.
Right. One's about design, like art and design, and then one's more on the business side of it. But if you look up The Future, that had FUTUR, it's on YouTube. You'll find them.
Yeah,
Teddy, anything?
I was trying to find that website real quick. The mic hiding techniques. It's a whole site on that. Can't find it, but should be easy enough to find. Maybe you guys can post it later. I would say just try to stay cross-pollinated. There's no only way to do things. I mean, keep learning, talk to the other guys, find some other guys in your town. I know some of you guys probably from smaller places, and it's hard to get resources, especially with other people doing this. But I know in Houston, where I'm at, we actually have a mixers meetup where a lot of the guys, we all just get together because we never get to see each other a lot on shoots. Where usually typically, have just one mixers on the show. So a lot of times we'll try and get together as a group and, share techniques and stories and, what's going on at rates, like Joe was talking, everybody kind of be consistent on that. But just keep learning. Keep learning.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Thank you guys again for joining us for the panel today, and thank you for the great work you guys are doing across the business. And guys, have any other questions on sound? I know some of these guys are members of the Film Career Group. Feel free to reach out, and we'll try to get some of the links or any of these other things that they've mentioned posted here in the Facebook posting for this. So thank you guys again. We're at an hour, and appreciate the time, and we'll catch up with you later. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Cool. And we're off. Thanks, guys.
All right. I got a jet. Thank you. It's been so much fun. Would love to chat and hang out, but bye.
Yeah.
All right. See you, Nathan.
Thank you for taking the time, guys. Appreciate it.
All right.
Bye.
All right. Oh, Joe, I've loaded up Arteria V7. So.
Hey, what were you laughing about earlier?
The boom thing, because Joe and I always have this thing about booms, branding and stuff like that. He's got a new ambient boom.
Oh.
It was making a lot of noise. And, did you ever get that figured out?
No. I never, I don't know. I used it at the conference, and I never had any issues with it. But yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see. I haven't had my.
You probably didn't have 2 or 3 slices on it.
Yeah, and I also didn't have my shotgun on it. It was just the Octava. So we'll see. But anyway.
Hey, it does a lot of fun.
Yeah. I've got one question for you, Teddy, since I have you on the line. On Washington's Armor, I took a note from this. You said you always put boom at the bottom. Do you keep a pretty consistent mix structure?
As far as what channel assignments? Yeah, I just put the lavs just come in whatever order they are, but I typically assign a character to one channel if they're a main character. I'm trying to do that. So that, like for instance, Washington I think was always the red mic, which would be the first one in my chain.
Yeah.
So, and that leaves it easier for the editor. So I try and leave consistency for characters and lavalier mic assignments. Sometimes we have to change them because you're having a technical issue or whatever.
Right.
That way, now of course when it shows up in the edit in the timeline, it's just going to be, you know, one. If you're using 3 mics, you have 3, and then
Right.
the boom.
Right.
It's never, you don't have the blank channels, of course.
Right.
So that's why, you know, I always have my boom on the end of the chain. I think in like super pro circles, they always want the booms on the first side, but I don't like mixing my boom with my left hand. It just economically, I'm right-handed, and it feels better for me mixing my main mic.
Right.
And so,
Do you do like a stereo or like are they all individual, or do you have a mix channel?
they're all individual, but on all the new machines, you can set up your 2-channel mix. So what I do is I set all my lavaliers mixed left and all my booms mixed right.
Okay.
And that's those ST tracks. I don't know that you saw coming in on the. Now they come in different on the sound devices, but on the Tascam they're called ST stereo tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And any of the machines you can set that mix up however you want. Those 2 channels.
Cool. Cool.
Awesome.
Alrighty. Thank you guys again for taking the time. And I guess I'll see maybe a couple of you in